From Baltimore, Maryland, this is the Stoop Sessions, a One Hope podcast. Join us for conversations about ministry on the stoop. Learn more about our work at www.onehope.gives.
Welcome back to the Stoop Sessions. Here we are in the Upton neighborhood on a stoop of one of our members. My name is Joel Kurz. I'm the pastor of the Garden Church.
My name is Stephanie Greer, the very pregnant Stephanie Greer.
Pregnant? How far along are you?
I don't know.
When do you do?
June 10th.
So,
7-ish weeks.
7-ish weeks. And we've got with us James Choi, pastor of New Covenant Baptist Church. And it's good to have you on the stoop, brother.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
James, just real quick, where is your church located?
Yeah, it's in Rockville, Maryland.
All right. And I wanted to have you on the stoop today because our theme is the working church.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a church that serves together. And to kind of kick off that theme, let me say this. A couple months ago, maybe 9 months ago or so, I saw a bunch of pictures on Facebook of you guys doing a baptism at your church.
That's right.
And you had all these members bringing gallons of water, dumping it into the tub.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Yeah, so part of the challenge this past year for our church was we had to have 14 different location changes, and the school didn't allow us to use, as part of their policy, to use the water. And so we're back at a location, and we're having baptisms, and we didn't have water. And so literally the thing that we thought of is to have church members bring a gallon or two of water. And they
How many gallons?
15 or so.
Is that a text message? Is that an email? Is that a yo, bring your own? Yeah. Just want to see how that got
BYOW.
Yeah, I mean, by God's grace, we had a prayer meeting the week before. And so we just announced, hey, church members, bring some water. And they were happy to do it. So we had a whole corner filled with gallons of water that members brought.
So here's the thing. I want to talk about the working church. And what we're talking about is a church where the members are working together in ministry. It's kind of simple, but maybe not so simple. Because I think maybe there's a sense in which a lot of pastors, ministry leaders, churches might feel like a few people are doing most of the work.
Yeah.
So that's the theme for today. James, you were in London at Spurgeon's Metropolitan Tabernacle recently. Tell us your experience there as far as his enduring legacy with the working church.
Yeah. So I think it was past October that I was there for, part of my PhD dissertation that I'm writing. And so my research was to be in their archives, historical archives, to look at some of their records. And this concept of this vision of the working church was really one of the biggest things that really stood out to me in seeing how the church members were so dedicated and committed to the larger vision of the church, which was just so convicting for me as a pastor of a young church. And so
Can you give me an example of what you saw?
Yeah. So the first thing that I saw when I arrived at the building, because as I was looking at my Google Maps trying to figure out where in the world I was, it was a Saturday afternoon, and they had a little temporary mini bookshop set up in front of the church, and folks were just going around everywhere evangelizing, just street evangelism. But what was even more fascinating on Sunday, I got to tell you, I mean, there's this whole thing that I could tell you, but the big thing on Sunday was they have a weekly Sunday school, what we refer to as children's ministry, but it's an evangelistic children's ministry that they do on a weekly basis. But this actually has been going around for over 100 years. And I could tell you more about that.
Well, so if you could define what a working church is, what does that mean?
Yeah, so the working church is, first of all, a biblical church. It's a New Testament church where the members of the church are genuinely converted Christians. And the church is a church composed of regenerate members who are actually doing and living life corporately in a way that Christians should be together. So faithful and active in discipling, in evangelism. It sounds basic, but when you actually see it in the life of a church, it really is an incredible thing. that I saw at the Tabernacle.
So you walk in, well, maybe you don't walk in, you're just looking around, the children's ministry happens on Sunday. Why does that, what caught your attention to say, this looks so different, but basic, but complicated, but however you describe it.
Yeah. First of all, as I was only there, only about a week or so visiting this church, on Sunday, I was surprised to hear, as I was greeting the members that I saw, turn to the left, turn to the right, and most of them that I saw started to introduce themselves by saying, I started attending this church as a result of either my child going through this children's ministry, Sunday school, or I myself had been somebody who has been a product of this children's ministry, evangelistic children's ministry, that's been going on at the Tabernacle for centuries, since Spurgeon's day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like this enduring legacy
Yes.
of Charles Spurgeon, his church, 100 years later, still working.
For sure, yeah.
Let's talk about Charles Spurgeon's vision of the working church, or maybe not even Charles Spurgeon's vision of the working church, but let's just talk about the working church in general.
Why it's
What's
biblical,
going on?
yeah.
Right. One thing that we could talk about, I think, is every member ministry.
Yeah.
How do we think about that in terms of 20% of the people doing most of the work versus a church where the vision is that every member is involved in ministry in some capacity?
Yeah, I really think it really does come down to the basics of what a church teaches a church is, and what a Christian is.
What do you mean by that?
Oftentimes, I think in our kind of evangelical world nowadays, 50, 100 years or so, about 50 years or so, there has been this kind of professionalization of ministry, where it's the pastors, it's the staff that does all the work.
Right.
But we know in the New Testament that's not the model, that's not biblical. And so, it's really just emphasizing what the Bible says and what what Christians are supposed to do.
Equip the saints for the work of ministry.
That's right.
So as you think through, and obviously we don't want to cast a negative light. I mean, we're not here to be like, here.
Sure.
But if we think through Ephesians 4, the pastor's job is to equip the saints to do the work. Where do you think we've kind of veered off in terms of is there hesitancy? Is there fear of being incompetent? I remember joining a church and not knowing what members even did, and it was an older woman that was like, hey, if you just stay here and do nothing, you become a leech. You actually don't serve. And I was like, well, I can't sing. And so I think some parts of that is unfolding what ministry actually, what is the elders actually equipping us for. It's not necessarily always let's be front facing, but I'm just thinking about a children's ministry.
For sure.
And so what is that, coming week by week and just giving a couple hours, understanding God's word, that kind of thing. So I guess what are some hesitancies that keep people from understanding really what are the pastors equipping us to do, and can we actually do it?
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, where churches have, again, not to knock on any churches by any means, but, just kind of where we are as a culture, as a society, it really has, many churches have veered toward pragmatism. And when a church's vision is really centered on pragmatism, it really becomes kind of meet the needs of the people. And the people who desire to serve are more serving in a context where it's specialized ministries, where they feel like they could, contribute their talents and gifts, which obviously is biblical, right? Everybody, the Lord has given gifts to every member of the church. Yeah. But again, I think when you kind of specialize ministry in that way, we neglect some of the basics of discipleship, evangelism, that should belong to every single member of a church who's a Christian.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that kind of...
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. Pastors are then therefore to be equippers and not ministry providers. Yeah. And I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? Because, I think a pastor's temptation could be nobody can do it as well as I can do it. I'm the one that knows how to counsel. I'm the one that knows how to evangelize. And so let me just get out there and do the work. And then as a result, that man is never training the church for the work of ministry. But then it can kind of go the other way as well, because, I think there's a challenge of people just coming into our buildings on Sundays and wanting to join our church, and they have sort of that expectation of, I'm going to come and receive, and not necessarily give. And so how do we kind of think through that? How do we encourage people, even as they are coming in, and what does that culture look like in a church to begin to fold people into this idea of a working church?
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Once you guys figure it out, once we all figure it out,
let us know.
Yeah.
Maybe Jesus will, he'll come back and then it'll be good.
Yeah.
But in the meantime,
I think it really does start with the right preaching of the word.
Yeah.
And applications that challenge the members of the church to own the duties of a Christian. So I know it sounds so basic, but that's basically what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. Is a member of a church a genuine Christian who is actively engaging in making disciples of all nations in the Great Commission?
Right.
That's hard to do sometimes in our culture where people are so tied up with busyness in their own lives, parenting, and there's sometimes a separation of the home life, the home Christian versus the church member Christian. And we need to, in our preaching, make sure that church members understand that there is no distinction, there is no duality of a Christian and separation.
What do you mean by the
tasks.
home Christian versus the church Christian?
Yeah, I think people tend to have a tendency to compartmentalize work life and church life, and
secular world versus my sacred world.
Yeah, and we need to, as Christians, genuine converted Christians, who have a healthy understanding, healthy biblical understanding of the church, realize that Christ is the center of everything in our work life, in our secular life, in our church life. It should all come together for the purpose of Christ.
Yeah, so on one hand, we're talking about making sure that your members are actually Christians, right? So, meaningful membership plays into this. Doing membership interviews with every member coming in, making sure that they not only understand the gospel, but there's some evidence of fruit in their life, that they give, that they display the fact that they're truly a believer. Perhaps for some churches, that are struggling with sort of this, kind of performance, seeker-sensitive, just come and receive kind of culture. It could be that there's just like a lot of people that are members of the church that are not actually regenerate. And so it's going to be very difficult to have a working church when your members are not Christians. Yeah. But then, on the other hand, would be sort of just seeing the whole of life as part of ministry in a sense. Yeah. Let me get into this though, because I feel like there's been a bit of a pendulum swing, whereas previously I think in church culture we were very overly programmatic. I'm thinking maybe a couple decades ago, and everything was expected to be ministry at the church, in the building, and I do feel like there's been a reaction to that, and rightly so. Yeah. And then the pendulum has swung, and now I think generally speaking, we're at a place where we embrace individual ministry, like, me on my block, my coworkers, my family, my neighbors, I do my thing. I have my own ministry things, but this is my stuff. It's not really church stuff. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so there's sort of a bit of a busyness with my own life, and then church programs, quote unquote, or church ministries, or getting together with the body for ministry seems like, man, that's just one more thing on my calendar. So all that to say, what's going on right now where people often seem too busy, too burned out for one more thing. Yeah. And
oftentimes that one more thing is we're going to meet for Bible study, we're going to pray together, we're going to gather, we're going to actually bring the people that we're evangelizing to. The one more thing ends up being what becomes a program at church. Yeah. It's kind of like, maybe I don't need that, especially if I'm already witnessing to people and I am sharing the gospel. And so there's kind of a forgetting of the broader Christ's coming back for the bride. Yeah. And it's kind of like I'm a lone ranger, which we know hard to be a true Christian and be a lone ranger at the same time.
I think that lone ranger is a good word, and I think here we're pushing back against two kinds of issues, and one is the lazy Christian. and the other is the Lone Ranger Christian, out there on my own. So what is this sort of compelling picture then of a ministry with the church? Are we talking about more programs? Are we talking about more organic ministry in the members' lives?
Ideally, I think the corporate mission and vision of the church should align together with individuals being faithful in their own lives to do what the Lord has called them
at their jobs, in their neighborhoods,
exactly,
around the dinner table.
Yeah. But the problem is, does the individual members of the church own the collective vision of the biblical vision of the church?
Because they're still part of this corporate gathered community that has a representation in the neighborhoods.
Yes, yeah, because even in evangelism, as we talk about, cultivating a culture of evangelism as a church, everybody knows that the most effective ways that evangelism could be done, is not just one person, going at it with a certain person, but asking the church to come alongside with prayer, with, hey, I'm inviting my friend to church. Can you talk to them? Yeah. And how many stories do we know of how when the church came together to pray together, to have conversations? And so I think, definitely in our culture right now, just the individualized, ownership of whatever, all sorts of things that we do. But if we understand that the church has a mission that we could be on together, we could do more work better together.
Yeah, we kind of miss out on that. Someone watered, someone planted, and the beauty of what the church does collectively and I think it does contribute to more burnout when you're like, it's my task to do the work of 19 other members, not the toe, and now I'm the eye, and now I'm a half an arm, and I'm the forearm, and I'm pinky, and God's like, I didn't really actually tell you to do that.
Exactly.
And so we miss out on that beauty of being able to watch that happen.
Yeah, you said it there, Steph. Like I feel like it's the need for each other is in some ways our remedy against burnout. It's the fact that we're not just simply trying to reach all the neighborhood kids on our own, but I'm doing that with a team of other people from the church, and it becomes something that's life-giving. We have one of our members who at the Garden Church who works on Monday nights with YLS stuff that you lead, our youth outreach. And one thing that she said recently was that it's life-giving for her. How wonderful is that her service is something that she feels adds quality to her life. And I think it's because she's part of the body and she understands where she fits, and it's not just this pressure that's just sort of on her.
Yeah, I think one thing that's simple, even at our young church, which can seem like a menial or kind of not very significant in terms of like the work of the church, but even we have open gym nights, basketball nights on Mondays, and it could just be a bunch of young guys playing basketball, or it could be an intentional effort to for evangelism, and so we've seen fruit of that, where brothers invite their neighbors, friends, people they've been evangelizing to this basketball night, and there's just such a collective, intentional conversations happening, inviting those friends to church, and we've seen some good fruit from that as well.
Yeah. We've done Taco Tuesdays in members' homes where people bring food together and tacos together, and it becomes evangelism and discipleship, but it's just eating together.
Taking walks outside, gardening, people crocheting. I think you said it earlier where you talked about the whole the threat that we have to compartmentalize and think that we need to be like, well, this is literally my responsibility as a mother, or this, and I'm doing it right here. And then at church, I show up on Sundays and I might occasionally serve here. But we kind of rob ourselves of the beauty of saying, well, if God, Lord over all your life, then you really can take a lot of pressure away by making those things accessible. And so you're not going to catch me at the gym. But, maybe at the gym, but not the basketball gym, basketball court.
So you'll be at the coffee shop.
I will be that is my ministry. I'll be at the coffee shop, and we can equate the excellence of Christ to why we should pursue good beans, right? But all that to say is it kind of, I think when I see another member interact with someone on the block that I've been praying for, and they do it with such new life and ask questions and do it without even some of the stigmas or the preconceived notions or things that I've walked through with that particular person, it teaches me It's a different type. It's like the elders, they're equipping us for ministry, they're helping us understand the word, and then I'm learning as I serve with other members and as they show their gifts and find out what their gifts are. Like, maybe you don't even know that you're good at evangelism. You can teach me. Or Hearts of Mercy, where I'm like, oh, I don't actually think like that. But this other member. So when we kind of hoard it kind of for ourselves, we don't get to experience the beauty of, what Jamie Dunlap would talk about is the compelling community when people are looking at all these different people. And I think you guys have said it over and over again, but being a regenerate Christian is the thing that makes you think, what is happening here? Like, why are these people kicking it and loving each other and persevering and serving? And so that every member ministry, I think sometimes there can be a false, I don't know, like some people will think, well, it's actually being taken care of, or those people do it better. When actually they probably just started serving and really took ownership to being like, I'm a member of this church, so everything that happens in this church concerns me. Souls and toilets. Yep. Maybe I'm saying toilets because I'm thinking about facilities right now. Souls and everything. Yeah.
How much of this should be top down versus member driven, like basketball, or if we do Taco Tuesdays? Is this should this be like the pastors, the leadership determining we're going to do Monday night basketball, or is this just like a member driven thing? Like, how should we think about the organizational structure behind sort of this working church kind of heavy ministry approach? Yeah.
So you guys just had the Compelling Community Workshop with Jamie Dunlap, and I think he said it, and others have said it too. I don't know who's the original person who said it, but pastors equipped ministry, deacons facilitate ministry, members do the work of the ministry. And so I think it really does come down to, more than anything, each member of the church, including the pastors, including the deacons, knowing their purpose and their role clearly. And so obviously the pastors will do the work of the leading, teaching, those kinds of aspects and equipping, but everybody just kind of owning their role well.
That's good. That's good. And then as the Lord gives them ideas to go with it. Yeah. Perhaps bring it to the pastors, bring it to the leadership.
For sure.
Maybe sometimes there's a necessity, a need for the church to structure it, announce it, and put it in the program, the bulletin. Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe other times it's just like, go for it. Yeah. But the goal is evangelism, visiting the sick, caring for the poor, meeting physical needs, reaching children with the gospel. Like, this is not something that we're just sitting back waiting for the professionals in the church to do. Yeah. But every member needs to be feeling a sense of, how do I contribute to this body? Yeah. And how do I get plugged in? How do I not even just get plugged in, because that almost sounds like we're offering, that was a loud motorcycle or whatever, offering programs.
Right.
But how do I contribute to the overall mission of this church?
Yeah. Yeah. So earlier, as I was recounting kind of my experience at the Metropolitan Tabernacle, I do want to kind of flesh that out a little bit, because again, that just observation of what they were doing week in and week out.
Mm-hmm. Give us the details.
For over a century was just so mind-blowing. But here, again, like on Sunday, I got there at the church, and a typical kind of hour or two, very traditional type of service. And then afterwards, what was so fascinating was everybody, after service ends, everybody goes down to the fellowship hall. Yeah. And at Metropolitan Tabernacle, man, one of the most diverse congregations that I saw. But even aside from the diversity, what was so pleasant and encouraging was that they all broke up into kind of these pockets of members where they were sharing almost kind of, I can't explain anything else but like family meals. So people would bring out these like picnic baskets, and they would bring out, silverware and plates and, food just being passed around. And, that was just cool in itself, very intentional in like having family meals together at church.
Do you think, is this a weekly thing?
It is a weekly thing.
So they're not announcing it or doing a sign-up sheet. It just happens.
It just happened. Yeah.
And some people are everyone is just making. Yeah,
and sharing
I'm
food.
stuttering because
but
I'm trying to.
but here's the thing. So you think, okay, then now let's go home. Let's take an afternoon nap after church is over. Yeah,
I love a nap.
No, everybody after about an hour or so, everybody cleans up, and then they're getting
When
ready.
you say everybody, what? Well, give me a number roughly.
I would say, so the membership, I think when I was there, they said around 500, and then plus, a couple more hundred for visitors.
So we're not talking about 25 people.
No. Yeah. But the people, so after lunch, I think they said about 300 members of the church pack up and are preparing for this afternoon evangelistic children's ministry, where about, I think, 12 or so vans are sent out to pick up children from all over the neighbor and to bring them to lead them in this 1 hour evangelistic, very, very intentional children's ministry program. Again, it takes a lot of intentionality and work, but it's not because it's not just about sending out random vans to pick up random kids.
Yeah. Right.
Members have been intentionally throughout the week going door to door, knowing their neighbors, getting to know their neighbors, and inviting these children to come on Sunday.
Right.
And again, I would say, from my observation, every corner of the church building is being utilized after their large group, singing Christ-centered hymns, a lesson that's shared from the Word. And again, one of the beautiful things was these are like the most, maybe it's like a British thing or whatever, but the most well-behaved, beautiful singing children that they're not even Christians, right? They're being invited to participate, but the way they have been doing it for centuries, or for decades.
It's a culture.
It's a culture that they have developed. And after that, they all break up into small groups, and every corner of the church building is broken up, where a leader and a co-leader are explicitly, I kid you not, explicitly articulating the gospel.
Wow.
And that's what they're doing week in and week out. For our young church, we have volunteers that rotate maybe like every 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and sometimes I love our church members, but it gets hard in a busy life. But these members are dedicated to this task in teaching these children. And then can I just tell you a little bit more? So after that, you would think, all right, let's go home. Finally, it's
so
about,
at this point, we've skipped the nap.
Yeah.
That's the part.
Yeah.
Right. So we're having meals after about 2/3, go out, get ready for the evangelistic kind of push. And then
about 3 to 4 is the evangelistic children's ministry. And then after that, you would think, all right, time to go home. But then they have something called the tea time. And so,
which means food.
Yeah, which means food.
It does not just mean tea.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. That's what I thought too. But again, they have another family meal, basically, where the members come back and they have tea time, another meal that they share with friends, and visitors that they've invited. And then after that, it's the evening service dedicated solely to evangelism. It's an evangelistic service where the gospel is even more clearly pronounced in that evening service. And then after that, basically they call it a evening service, but it's basically another service focused on inviting people that have been evangelizing to. And I kid you not, even after that service, people stuck around at that church, talking, sharing, encouraging for about another hour and a half. And literally, we did not go home until 9:30 that evening, and we were there since basically 9 a.m.
How did you feel? Were you tired?
I was tired, but I was so energized by just the genuine culture of love and encouragement in the Word.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if I could just go more,
we're here.
Even after a long day like that, you would think, all right, it's done. But the following day, they have what they call corporate prayer meetings, Monday night prayer meetings, where I'm guessing just about that many people, 300 people, came and prayed for an hour for these efforts that they are intentionally, for their evangelism, for their discipling, for global missions, for local outreach. It's fascinating.
So what's going on with American culture to where that sounds like something people would push back against and say that's too much. I need some family time. We're going to get burned out. Like, I feel like there's a fear of burnout. Like that's to some degree maybe one of our greatest fears in churches is it's not that I would not do enough for the kingdom, but I just might do too much and burn out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like minimize that. Like something's going on there because people do burn out. You know, that is a thing. And families are neglected. You know, kids can be neglected. So like, what is the cultural disconnect? You know, why is it that, you know, perhaps in a lot of churches today, it's hard to get, you know, a weekly rotation of children's ministry put together, serving once every 6 weeks, you know, as opposed to some intentional sort of like week in, week out, like this is just what I do.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea on that?
Yeah. Yeah, in a larger sense, you know, we as Americans could have all the excuses, but we know that England is actually even more secularized than America to a certain extent. But again, I think where, no church is perfect. On this side of heaven, obviously, there's all sorts of flaws and such and such. But I think one of the things that Spurgeon's Tabernacle has done well, and just carrying the legacy of Spurgeon's ministry, is that they've done, you know, the main thing well. Proclaiming the gospel, encouraging members of the church to own the ministry of the church. You know, and that's the difference. You build upon the few things that they know they need to be doing, the essentials, over decades, and that's what you see, the Lord bearing fruit.
So you're saying we've got to lead the sheep and not beat the sheep over this issue.
Yeah.
You don't want to show them this beautiful picture and then beat them up for not fulfilling that immediately, but it's a matter of teaching and training and a slow culture being built to where there's more and more
That's good.
life-giving ministry happening where people realize this doesn't feel the same as work to me. It's not. It might not be physical rest per se, but there is a rest to it. You know, because there's something rejuvenating. There's something that's truly recreating within me as far as the rest that I'm receiving through service.
And I think in some ways it probably would help, like not the slow mount to that, but when I hear that, I'm like, man, that sounds beautiful. And when I think of like ways why there would be a hesitation, I'm like, man, it's a different type of work, but it takes like a spiritual, I don't know, like a spiritual compelling to actually say, this is like the work I want to willingly, which is what happens on the Lord's Day, give up the work that does need to be done for the work that God says I can rest in, you know? Hi, Brian. And so, I guess as I hear that, I'm like, well, I think the thing that even as a church member, I'm like, maybe that wouldn't feel as hard if I had more of a hunger for God's word, not even a shame context, but like, this is actually the main thing. Because I do think like as we dialogue through this, we've got well-meaning members, some that don't even know that they should be doing the work. They've come from different churches where no one said, I'm equipping you with the work. Like you can actually do, like Paul saying to the Romans, like I myself am confident that you will be competent to counsel. I don't think people know that they can like, I thought that was just like what a pastor does. And it's actually like, no, I'm going to teach you how to learn the word and live the word and share the word. So there are those members, and then there's also members that are like, I think I'm okay with just this much. And so the middle part is like, okay, what is the main thing? And what are some ways we get kind of fuzzy on the main thing that burns us out from like, we actually could just be savoring and seeking God's word together, and this is where the work and the rest happens, I guess. So just hearing that, it's like, how do we think through?
Yeah, I think it's good stuff, and I think those are good questions to leave us with to some degree to think about. I think one thought that I have is permission. You know, in our church, I don't know if it's just our own church culture, but sometimes I'm surprised when people feel like they didn't have permission to like serve in some way. Like, I didn't know I was allowed to just,
offer to wash the sheets.
Right.
Permission.
I'm like, you don't have to ask permission to serve. Just get at it. Spurgeon said, James, you see that book right there by Alex DePrima?
Yeah.
Just a random book on a stoop.
We just happen to have a book here.
Sorry.
I want to close with this quote. Before I do, James, you're studying Spurgeon. Tell us a little bit about your studies. What's your focus?
Yeah, so I've been at this way too long, and Lord
I think
willing,
that's what every PhD says.
actually
I've been
think
at it
it'd
way
be
too
really
long.
encouraging for
It's just
those who
part
are
of
like-
what they tell you to say, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he probably feels it, Joe. He probably feels it.
Yeah,
But it's just on time. Go ahead, my bad.
but my study is following the leadership of brothers who have actually done really, really good work. You may have heard of Brother Jeff Chang, who's done excellent work with Spurgeon's ecclesiology.
You got another book right there?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So Jeff has been such a example and a helpful encouragement for Spurgeon's ecclesiology, and I'm kind of attempting, hopefully worth contributing at all, but kind of going a little bit deeper into Spurgeon's ecclesiology and focusing on Spurgeon's regenerate church membership, but mainly how Spurgeon, the soul winner, his theology of conversion impacted and influenced every aspect of the church. So he was not a soul winner just in the sense of getting people converted, but soul winner in the sense from the start of conversion to seeing the rest of his members go to heaven. Right. And so just the soul care ministry, from soul winning to soul care,
That's
holistically.
Good. That's good.
Is kind of what my dissertation is going to be about.
That's great, man.
Sweet.
You
I'm
gonna write a book?
I'm just trying to get through.
Should you ask a PhD?
I'm gonna add it to my shelf.
That's good.
So let me read this. This is from Alex DePrima, Spurgeon and the Poor. Excellent book on the working church of the Metropolitan Tabernacle and Spurgeon's ministry. And he said this, we each have an allotted work to do. If we are the Lord's elect, let us take care that we do it. If you're a tract distributor, go on with your work. Do it earnestly. You're a Sunday school teacher? Go on. Do not stay in that blessed work. Do it as unto God and not as unto men. You are a preacher. Preach as God has given you the ability. Are you like Zebulun, one that can handle the pen? Handle it wisely. And you shall smite through the loins of kings therewith. And if you can do but little, at least furnish the shot for others, so that you may help them in their works of faith and their labors of love. But let us all do something for Christ. I will never believe that there is a Christian in the world who cannot do something. Good word to close on.
Yeah.
James, thanks for being on the Stoop.
Thanks for having me. It was a joy.
It's a pleasure. Appreciate you listening. Here we are with all the noises of Baltimore City around us. Hopefully it's not too loud. We're experimenting with actually recording these things on a stoop.
It was only right that we would take the
only
Stoop
right.
Sessions to the Stoop.
Yeah.
Here we go. We're evolving.
Yep. But if you don't like it, if it's too much distraction of us waving at people, just let us know. We'll do something else. Or maybe we won't.
Stay tuned.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Stoop Sessions. Be sure to catch us next time. As One Hope exists to build healthy churches in the inner city, check us out and connect at www.onehope.gives.